I had a very multi-ethnic upbringing. My mother's Honduran, my father's from the United States, and I grew up in outside the U.S., places like D-Rock, Greece, and Mexico. My parents were amazing role models. They loved God very much, but I didn't. While my parents were very much Christian, I wasn't, and I was exposed to pornography in grade 4, so that really warped my mindset on what was good and what was holy and what should be looked after. In that is that I was exposed as well to situations and people where I had a chance to get involved with drugs like marijuana and ecstasy, alcohol. And yeah, I went full force into that. My parents couldn't really control me on that. I got really good at lying. I became a compulsive liar. In high school and college, I was extremely hedonistic, agnostic, atheist. Usually I would jimmy the locks for friends' cars or not my friends' cars. I got involved in very sketchy behavior. I would sneak out at night in order to visit girls' houses and receive sexual gratification whatever way I could. My view on sex was incredibly tainted because of what was in pornography, and it was stuff that escalated. It wasn't like I mean, there's nothing good, but it got worse and more degrading and more violent and disgusting. And I was a child. I wasn't even 18 yet. So by the time that I reached 18 and I had a little bit of independence and I could go out on my own, I went into university and wow, that was not a good time. So I became incredibly apathetic, incredibly immoral. On that downward spiral that I was on, I hit rock bottom, and it was really my breaking point, and that was where things really started to change. I had essentially become homeless. The house I had been staying in was sold, and so I stayed with a friend and his parents, and they were awesome, they were amazing, but they kicked me out, and for good reason. I was corrupting him. I was pushing him towards not a sexually or a Christ-like view of sex with his girlfriend, with his own issues that he had, and depression and psychosis and such, and he needed help, and I was a horrible influence. So when I was removed, I was also put on probation for my studies, and that was where my professor and I had essentially gotten into it, and to make a long story short, that probation meant that the housing that I was going to move into on campus was unavailable, so I became homeless. I was looking for a place to stay and a way to get people off my back. My parents were obviously not pleased with me. My friends were starting to leave me. I had just ended a very toxic relationship and such, and I needed a bit of a fresh start, and I found this thing on a Google ad. It just popped up, and it said Youth with a Mission, YWAM, and as an aside, this is insane because they don't actually pay for Google ads. They're a 501c nonprofit. They don't have money for that kind of stuff. So I was like, cool, this is in Colorado. Weed's legal. I know all these different destinations that I'm going to party on the way up. So I packed my bag full of my mixers and liquor, and I drove straight through, and it was a party the entire way up. Alcohol, women, and then I get to, of course, stop at my grandma's in order to pretend to be a nice and wholesome child so that people would get off my back. Again, I was a compulsive liar at this point, and I was very much trying to seem a different way than I was. And so by the time that I got to Colorado and YWAM Denver, I was hungover, and I was shocked to realize how Christian it was. They pulled out all these forms. They're like, no dating. I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't been single in years. They had no alcohol, no tobacco, let alone weed. And all of a sudden, my party lifestyle that I was really wanting fell apart because I had to sign all these things, and I didn't really have a place to go to if I failed. I ended up adhering to all that. And within those first 2 weeks, there were these two speakers. The first one was this old Marine, and he just kind of shattered my whole worldview, really cut deep into me, and removed away a lot of the filth that I had. A lot of the scales from my eyes kind of fell down then. And then the second person was a man named Claude Bonjour. He's this amazing old Swiss man, and he was incredibly gifted with prophecy, and he just started speaking into my life. He was like, Mark, these are the passports that you've had. These are the amount of passports that you had, which is quite something because I had 3 at that point. He told me countries that I had been to, and that just shocked me. To make a long story short, I got sick that week. And instead of taking the time to go and eat with everybody else, he brought my lunch to me and sat on my bunk bed with me and just explained the gospel to me. And during that week is when I actually received Christ. There was this whirlwind of activity, and I ended up selling everything that I owned, moving to South Africa in order to do this school called School of Biblical Studies, where you read the Bible 5 times in 9 months. Highly recommend it for anybody that's looking for it. It was also the place that after not dating any girl for the 2 years that I had been saved, the first girl that I dated is now my wife, my beautiful bride, Taryn. I went from being a sexual deviant to being somebody who was washed clean and made pure and am enjoying marriage now in sexual purity. I went from somebody who was a compulsive liar to being saved by God's unashamed truth, and I now get to enjoy being part of God's family.